Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Evolution Security Podcast. We have another amazing guest, Mr. Matt Pranka from Xray Alpha. Buddy, thanks for coming on the show, joining us and hanging out and having a conversation with us. How you doing, buddy?
No, I'm good, man. Thanks for having me, man. I'm glad I was able to come on with you guys.
Oh, yeah, it's awesome when the stars align for sure. We know you're really busy, so thanks for taking some time out of your schedule. So, Eric got me turned on to you based on some really spicy drills that you put out, and that's what got me into following you a bit. And then, of course, Eric, he can bring us in here because you and him met at the Combatives Summit, which we just released a show today about the Combatives Summit. But Eric, let me throw it on to you, brother.
Sure will. Yeah, Matt, again, brother, thank you so much. Again, like Aaron said, we know you're real busy teaching people, doing all that good stuff out there, helping people become more capable. And I'll just say it outright. The coolest part about meeting you at the Combative Summit was, number one, guys like you've been doing all that you've done through the years, still a consummate student. So, a lot of people, we were impressed to see you there training with us, and frankly, even doing stuff that may not be what you would do yourself, but you went through it anyway. We can hit on that a little bit here in a second. But in all honesty, man, that's impressive. We like seeing that in folks that we follow and learn from. So that was pretty impressive. With that said, Matt, just real quick, for our audience members that don't know you, I think there's a lot of them that do, but can you just give us a brief summary bio? Let our audience know who you are, buddy.
Yep. Well, my name's Matt Pranka. I started a training company called Xray Alpha, primarily focusing on, training military and law enforcement was kind of how I originally scoped it, and have started to branch out to do, some open enrollment stuff. Main thing that's stopping me kind of from doing a lot of open enrollment civilian is just purely time. So I'm trying to combat that by putting out as much information on social media platforms that I can for free, so guys have it and they can start going down this training pathway that I've been on for quite a while. I retired from the military in 2020, did 26 years, about 17 years in the Navy, and my last 9 in the Army. And got out, pretty much retired, and just started even working more after I retired.
Yeah, I kind of feel like that's going to happen to us as well. We're nowhere near your, holding the candle to what you do, but, we have a newer training business ourselves, working both firearms and the combatives weapons integration piece. And that's what Aaron and I want to do when we retire. And I can retire at 57. I just turned 50, and I'm going to retire at 57 and try to do that full time. And I'm sure I'm going to be more busy at that point.
Oh, yeah.
But one of the things that you and I have a slight connection, and that's and I'm sure that he would appreciate telling you hello, and that's from Justin Ball. I know that you guys at one point worked together, but Justin and I share coaching duties at our jiu-jitsu gym at the 0600 class. He does it more than I do lately because of my work. I haven't been able to be there in the mornings as much, but that's certainly something that I do enjoy when I can get my workouts over in the morning instead of in the evening. But yeah, Justin is who kind of said, "Hey, tell Matt." I said hello and get him to the gym for Daybreakers. So that kind of is what got our conversation started.
Yeah, no, it's I haven't seen Justin in years, but yeah, we work together. Great dude. So I'm hoping that in the very near future, I can get out there to y'all's gym and get some training sessions in for sure.
Yeah, and we would love to have you there. And I'll let him know that you said that. And like you and I talked offline, you know, if you're just trying to fit in some training, remember I got the mats at the house. If that becomes you know, an opportunity as well, you're always open to do that if you like.
No, I appreciate it. I'll definitely take you up on it.
Cool. Well, we'll just spin briefly because we really want to get into the training side. You know, that's really what we wanted to have you on the show about. But I did want to know your thoughts on the Combatives Summit. What, you know, your main takeaways from that. I personally thought it was an incredible event, but I just want to know your thoughts.
No, I thought it was a great event. I think it's one of the only places I've ever been that had such a high concentration of high level, you know, kind of grapplers, jiu-jitsu guys, catch wrestlers. It was really good in terms of, you know, the instruction, the information share, and that's really why I went. I wanted to see, you know, what guys were doing with the weapons integration stuff. You know, I train a lot of that with some different guys, but I just wanted to experience it and go as a student. So I reached out actually to John and kind of asked him if it would be a big deal if I signed up. He was like, hell no. Because I guess they had been trying to get instructors to come out there, and guys didn't take them up on it. But, you know, for anybody listening, for the ones in the future, I highly recommend it. For me, it was great. Got to meet some really good people that I normally, you know, wouldn't be around in the training world, you know. So got to hear Kelly McCann talk,
Mm-hmm.
you know, Craig Douglas, Cole Miller. There's a bunch of guys, you know, John and, you know, Cliff Byley from Hill County
Yep.
Combatives, all those dudes. It was really good. Got a lot out of the training, got even more out of, you know, the sidebar conversations and just discussions. It was really good. You know, I highly recommend it. I think kind of what Matt Larson's doing with the, you know, the American martial arts idea and that system. I think, you know, I wish him the best with it. I think it's good for what they're trying to get out of it. Get guys training, get guys being more aggressive, you know, getting guys to experience like kind of, you know, violence with conditions, you know, because I think a lot of that is missing in guys training.
Oh yeah.
You know, it's too, and then what you see, like what's typically available and kind of beamed out to everybody, you know, via social media or YouTube or whatever, is not really, I wouldn't say it's the best stuff, right?
Agreed.
So you go and you find these guys in these little, you know, niche, you know, practitioners that and trainers that are running schools that you would never even come across. Like I mean, I could build out a whole month of places, dudes I want to go train with. I want to go train down, you know, with Cliff Byerly, with Cole Miller, you know, who's the other guy? There's a gym down in that Craig trains at, the guy that gave Craig Douglas
Yep.
his black belt.
Yeah, Mike. I'm terrible remembering his last name. Mike was an incredible person to talk with. Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Who gave Craig his black belt?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
and go
I
ahead.
think it's just a good, you know, that type of the information share, kind of the fellowship, that just all of the discussions that happen. You know, I took a ton away from it. I filled up an entire notebook of just ideas and concepts that I was trying to jot down as fast as I could, kind of, you know, through lectures and after training sessions. So I got a lot out of it, man. I highly recommend it.
Awesome. Yeah, yeah. I saw. I mean, you know, I saw you with your notebook. You know, just seriously taking down copious notes. And I will tell you, there's a couple of things you mentioned um, that, of course, Cliff Byerly. We talk about Cliff all the time on this show because Cliff is one of the most important instructors that a lot of people don't know about, and they should. And, and he's getting more and more known out there right now. I don't want this to sound
Yeah,
like that
bro. I
he's
was
not.
gonna say, man, it seems like he's getting out there even more, which is real exciting.
Cliff, incidentally, it's just a cool story, is that we met Cliff not through Craig Douglas or any of our other, the ShivWorks collective guys. He was a listener of our show, and he would comment on certain things, and we started interacting with him. And Cliff just invited Aaron and I out to his complete combatant class in Alabama earlier this year. And it's kind of an amalgamation. Of course, he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu and, a damn good shooter himself, and, in his recon background and LA SWAT. But it was very, very familiar to anybody that has been to ECQC or EWO, Craig's classes, but yet different too. And one of the things about Cliff's class, at least that one, is there's not a live fire element. So it's just 2 full days of the combatives piece, adding in the UTM marking cartridges, with the EVOs. And it is a phenomenal class. Well, folks need to seek Cliff out for certain. And his vehicle combatives class I took there was phenomenal too. And that was another thing that Aaron and I mentioned is, yes, the simunitions and the UTM is all important. People should be doing that. Absolutely, they should be doing that. But not discount even that type of training, even if it's with blue guns. Obviously you want the marking cartridges, but at the same time, man, don't discount, doing that type of training, even if it's with blue guns. But yeah, Cliff is awesome. If you can get to his ranch, Aaron and I have been intending to travel out there just because he's always offering his time. But Craig Douglas too, your guys, I happen to be, in on some of your guys' conversations, and, Craig's AMAS class, which for some reason, Aaron and I, one time it was because I got pulled in on a deployment and I didn't get to end up going to it. But his arm movement inside structures class, it's for solo work. And just hearing you and Craig talk about structure work with some of your background, and I heard you say something about sometimes you got to be agnostic about some of this stuff, and just being a fly on the wall during that discussion was really cool, Matt. Your thoughts on some of that discussion you and Craig had.
I think it's, this is one of the things where it, you see stuff being put out, right? And I've been kind of chastised for quite a bit, for my thoughts on how that training takes place, right? I think there's elements of your training that have to be very, very private. It's not that guys can't have them, they can't do it, but it's not something in my mind that you throw out on social media, and that's what you're leaning on. And to me, CQB is one of those. And I think there's a lot of guys that are making, marketing their businesses surrounded by teaching CQB, whether it's from, leaning on their pedigrees or their backgrounds or something. And people like it. And I think they like it because it's kind of like non-quantifiable training, right? There's
good point.
There's no way to tell if you're good at it or not. Right. So everybody feels good at the end of it. And then, guys they like teaching it, and not that there aren't some very, very experienced guys teaching it, but there's a lot of guys that have kind of elementary school educations in CQB, primarily coming from that law enforcement background. And they just don't have a lot of time doing it. They don't have a lot of time training it, but they've got all the equipment, they've got all the gear, they can dress up and say the words, but they're, in my opinion, their actual understanding of it is still at kind of an infant level. So it's, talking to Craig about it, I think, the way that I look at training, any type of training, is I will simplify it.
Yep.
And I think that's one of the biggest telltale signs of if somebody truly understands something is, can you explain it in very, very simple terms, right? You think for CQB, the easiest thing is to have somebody, without using their hands, tell me what you're doing when you enter a room. And that's one of the hardest things for anyone to do, because as soon as, I come in and then I'm I come up here and like you have to act it out. You don't really have an ingrained understanding of what's happening in terms of like order of battle, sequences and processing type things that are happening in a fight like that. And I also think there's a lot of, if you think of the CQB world, there's a lot of guys teaching it, and have some very high opinions about it who've never done it. Like I would say the vast majority haven't really banged it out in a room. Maybe once, but that's few and far between. And and for me, that's where a lot of the social media side of the tactics training, you lose me with it. I just lift away from it, and it is whatever. It's a bunch of guys sitting around patting each other on the back and brushing each other's hair and telling each other how great they are. And when I see it, or the guys that I work with see it, it's like, you guys don't even know what you don't know. You wouldn't even be involved in a conversation about CQB at the levels that the people that actually use it.
Well, and Matt, if I could interject there, I want to be vastly upfront. I definitely we don't have an expertise in that. Never would even feign that. Is it something I want to learn more about? And but one of the things that we talk about on this show pretty often is how folks see CQB as like they're going to go through their house like a ninja. And when that's not necessarily, unless they've got to get to family members, the best idea. Maybe hard pointing, in an area that you've designated is a better option if you don't have to go throughout your house looking for, would be,
Well,
criminals. Or go ahead.
So this is where I think a lot of the actual idea or the actual understanding of what a fight inside a house looks like, the speed at which that unfolds at, right? And anybody that's telling you, like, if you're gonna stand and post up and hard point, from not an exit, like maybe hard point a bedroom or something, and maybe let somebody come to you, by the time they come to you, there's nowhere to go. And they'll shoot you through the walls, through the doors, through it. So I think it's, from a common sense standpoint, you think about it. If I challenge you to a fight in a bar and we go out in the parking lot, right, and I'm going to fight in slow motion and you're going to fight at full speed, who do you think is going to win that fight?
Yeah, the person at full speed
is going to win every time, without fail. You're going to win, and you're going to win so fast. So when you talk about clearing your own house, that is when guys can go as fast. You can go faster in your known floor plan that you live in, right? I bet if you sat and put some thought to it, you could probably think about where every person could hide in your house, right? I know I could. If I moved from my front door, I know all the places I can hide. I know all the angles. I mean, I walk through this house. I've been walking through this house for the last 17 years, right? You're not hiding from me in it. So if I need to clear the house, and a lot of people like to put this kind of fantasy land context, like, I'm going to go get my kids. Okay. Like, maybe somebody broke in the back door or whatever, and that fight's fast, right? That only looks one way. You run in there, but now the discussion has to happen. Once you get in there fast, you rescue your kids. Do you have the skills with the tool in your hand to deliver energy at faster than real life speeds? And the vast 99% of the time, the answer is absolutely not. You don't have it, right? So my view on this, you want to be really good at doing solo CQB, become a world-class shooter, or as close to you can as it, right?
Nice.
I'll take guys with very well-developed and overdeveloped, foundational skills, shooting skills, and common sense over anyone that's like, yeah, I shoot a little bit, and but I've been to a lot of CQB classes. Like, I'm amazed that there's CQB classes that have no live fire in them. Like, how do you pressure test what you're actually doing? Because we've all seen it, guys will do things with UTMs or Sims guns that they absolutely cannot and will not do with a live rifle.
Mm.
Right? It's you take recoil away, you take the sound, the blast, all that away, and guys are gonna, you do force on force, nobody's aiming, nobody's using their sights because they've also never been on the range and pressure tested themselves with real tools, with real ammo, and tried to understand the vision game, even understanding the basic foundational skills of how well those things have to be developed to be that aggressive with that gun. It's just people don't do the work on that, right? Because it's easier and it's probably more fun instead of going to a class or going to the range for week after week after week after week grinding away at very basic stuff. That's not very fun and exciting in terms of training, but it's fun to go to this course where I get to get dressed up in kit and play commando for a little bit, right? I tell everybody, like, if you're under 30 years old and you're taking CQB classes, like, dude, I can give you a phone number to a place you can go and join an organization where you get to do that all the time. Right? But now don't be surprised when you go through that process and you don't even get selected to start the training. Because that's another thing about CQB that is missing, where it really comes down to what makes the best units in the world so good at CQB is really the guys that they select to start the training. Right? They've figured out with their own, recipe of what they're looking for, because it's not the best guys. They're looking for a type of guy.
Interesting.
That's able to be trained, right? And that's something that across law enforcement does not exist. Not even to enter the police department, right? Let alone a SWAT team. What are they looking for? Like, you go to maybe a full-time team has probably a more robust selection process, but it's probably largely built around, physical activity and not quitting. Right? That's an element, but that's not assessing anyone's trainability for CQB and for what happens inside a house when you start shooting bullets at each other.
Well, and Matt, you talk about pressure testing, and again, this is an element that I just, you are making me think differently about some aspects of it, but not having an expertise in it. That's why I'm just listening, because it's outside of my lane. But what I will tell you regarding your comments about pressure testing is that's something that I vastly and we vastly believe in. We've been training with Craig Douglas. He's a dear friend. For I've been training with him for almost 14 years now, and that's a hallmark of Craig's courses is pressure testing.
Yep.
And that's why I like hearing what you're saying regarding CQB. But at the same time, it humbles me to think about, that's just not something I have a wheelhouse in. And maybe that's something I, need to try to get more educated on. But I'm also realistic of where I am in that. I'm just being, honest.
Well, Matt, so I was looking at your course offerings, and as you're talking about this, is that, and you already mentioned that you're trying to open up, eventually, I think trying to open up more open enrollment classes. Do you think at some point you'll offer some CQB courses in open enrollment? I mean, I have my thoughts about that, whether it's even something I want to try to do or not, but I'm just curious if that's something you think would be valuable to the civilian market. What are your thoughts on that if you would ever offer something like that?
So personally, I don't think that, like, team-based CQB is of value, right? It's an experience.
Yeah.
Guys want to go through it for understanding, but the first question is, where's your team? Where's your team, and how often are you guys going to train?
Mm.
Right. And then like you go to some of these courses where I've never been to a civilian CQB course. Let me start with that. But from what you see, like there's no real like SOP. Like if you were to ask them, what type of CQB do you do? Like you do an amalgamation of nonsense,
Mm.
of a blended tactic of a bunch of different things. And that's not how, no one at any level starts CQB and learns limited penetration. Lim Pen CQB is for people who will never train CQB, to give them something to do.
Mm.
Right? It comes from, combat clearance and the risk mitigation stuff that led to the development of that technique, but it's one tool, right? It's not a CQB system, right? And this is where I think the conversation gets muddied, or has been muddied, and it happens from law enforcement guys, law enforcement guys, and then also low level understanding military guys that come out and they're selling their version of CQB as combat clearance because it's so effective, blah 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 blah, all this stuff. And really, that's like, they try to redefine the principles of CQB have never changed, and they will never change. Right? It just won't, right? It's surprise, speed, violence of action. Those are the principles you don't violate. But guys will try to say, well, no, I'm not there. Here's the thing I love the best. I'm not trying to run to my death. Well, that's good, buddy, because I'm not either. I'm running to someone else's death. That already tells me your mindset is so bad and so fucked up. Like CQB is not a thing for you. If that comes out of your mouth, that I'm not trying to run to my death, cool, me neither. I'm running to someone else's death if they want to fight. This is where I think the mindset about CQB is different. You go into a house, like, make no mistake, I am the fucking traumatic event that's about to happen. It has nothing to do with somebody forcing their will on me. It should be the same mentality for in the combatives world, right? Like, I'm not playing your fucking game if I'm wrestling. I'm forcing my game down your throat and making you adjust to what I'm doing. But my game is still, it's coming. It's coming at you hard and fast, right? And I think that's the mentality, that's the principle, from a training standpoint. You want guys to be able to do CQB very fast, very aggressively, and over time, training at that pace, they become inoculated to making decisions and become very, very comfortable at making decisions at faster than real life speeds. Right? There, you think of it, is it easier to run 100 meters in 10 seconds or 30 seconds? Right? You want to win a 100-meter race, you're going to run it in 10 seconds. You're not going to train for years and years running it for 30 seconds to win that 10-second race. And this is where I think people don't understand this, right? Because they've never been in a fight in the house, or from the law enforcement world, if someone shoots at them in the house, like, the vast majority of departments leave the house.
Mm-hmm.
If that's your TTP, your operational employment of that tactic, CQB is not in your mission essential task list. Structure clearing is.
So out of curiosity, Matt, because again, from a completely ignorant standpoint, so just let me walk that back, digress a second, is that if anything that I would be interested in myself as a civilian now, would only be solo. I admit I'm not interested in team stuff either. That's just not something, and nor has this been an interest of mine either, to this point. Did some of the information that came out during the Combatives Summit and yours and Craig's discussion make me think a little bit about it? Sure. But back to the solo piece. Is that still, you mentioned the violence of action? So even as a solo person going through a structure, you're still going to move with that violence and speed, correct? Is that what you're saying? Or
Yeah. So for me, if I'm clearing anything by myself, I'm just doing the one man's portion of points of domination CQB.
okay,
And I'm probably, you know, gonna do you're still assessing a room from beyond the doorway as you go to it. The thing I'm not doing is I'm not coming up and stopping at that doorway. Right? My head is still up. I'm looking into the room. And as I get closer to the doorway, larger and larger parts of the room are available. What I think a lot of guys have a problem with when they're training this is they have a problem reacting to when they see nothing. They want something to be there. So it turns into this slow little sneaky peeky thing, right?
yeah.
Like that's fine if it's pitch black and you're under nods. But as soon as I hear something or I see your barrel or I see your light come into here as an adversary that's sitting in a deep corner, I just shoot out the door. I'll shoot through the doorway. I'll hold you there for the rest of your life. Right? Now it becomes a game of who can reload faster. So this is where I think a lot of this falls apart. Now, obviously, that relies heavily on guys that have very well developed fundamentals. You can move and shoot aggressively. Guys that are playing sneaky peekaboo games at the door typically cannot shoot and move aggressively, from my experience. Right? They're having to, the shooting can't run in the background, which is one thing it absolutely has to do in CQB because of how many decisions you're making. If you think of it in terms of you've got 100 pennies to commit to this tactic, right? Doesn't matter what you're doing. I'm going to commit 1 penny to the shooting piece. And that shooting needs to be so well developed that at CQB close in distances, right? Kind of 40 feet and in, I can make the bullets go wherever I want as fast as I want, right? That allows me, that just runs in the background. That allows 99 more pennies that I can commit to processing what's happening, right? That's all of what I have in my head. Now, if it takes me 60 pennies to figure out a 5-foot shooting problem, then I only have 40 pennies to commit to processing. And this is where the breakdown happens. But all of this has to be worked out on the training side. Like I will tell you, the last place that I worked, I would say we never once went to the range and trained combat clearance. I don't ever train to throw a punch in slow motion. I know I can do that. I train to throw full power punches. What do you got, Aaron?
So that begs the question then, that is it something that you would ever be interested in teaching solo clearing to civilian guys like us?
To be honest, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would be. I think it would be. I think if I were to do it, there would be a test on guys' ability to shoot on the very first day, and that would be entrance into the course.
Nice.
I think that's the only way you could do it. Show me that you're competent enough to do this, and it wouldn't be like, hey, we're not going to stand there and shoot, because typically, like what you're doing, if you're clearing your house or clearing a building by yourself, right? That is a series of position entries and position exits, right? It's basically what you're doing. You're moving in and out of positions. More times than not, you're not shooting, but you're trying to decide if you need to shoot. That can all be done on the range with live ammo, right? In a very practical gamer mentality. But that's the skill you're working on, is moving into position, setting up, being ready to shoot sooner so you don't have to shoot faster kind of mentality. And that's what's missed in this, like muddying down a conversation about moving through a house with where your feet go and then the angles and this or that. When as soon as people start talking about angles, and you saw it in Devin's class, where does everybody's head go if I say pay attention to your feet and angles? Are they looking up at the angles or are they looking down at the ground?
Look at the feet.
Yeah, they look at the fucking feet. Almost to a man. If you put lines on the ground and you want people to step on the lines, they're going to stare at the lines. So we're going to violate major vision issues, right? Of being visually precise, visually aggressive. And you have to identify threats and angles and be completely aware of the situation. But the first thing I'm going to teach you is to stare at the ground. It doesn't make sense, right? And I think, I'm very happy I went through, got to hear the limb pen explanation from Devin, because I've heard it before from a few other guys, but it was good, and he said it multiple times during his thing, like, this is for untrained people.
Yep, he did.
To be able to survive clearing a building. Like, that's it. It's so if that's where teams and departments and agencies, that's where you want to go. Like, your whole TTP is built for untrained people. Like, that's a good that's a good thing. Yeah, you're trying to give somebody something to do for CQB. You're like, we're going to give you a plan of action for guys who don't shoot good and don't move good. Like,
good point. Well, Matt, and I know Aaron has some questions about USPSA. But one of the things I will mention is Dave Boone's class that I took. You mentioned reductionist. He had a pretty fluid reductionist thought process on that problem. And one of the things that he said when approaching doors is he said he didn't want you to think about slicing a pie. He wanted you to think about arcing as you're going past that door and clearing what you visually can see. And then, of course, at the point that you move into the room and your point of domination. But I guess what I'm saying regarding that was one of my secondary elementary exposures to that in a better thinking way. But again, he definitely didn't want you stopping at places, which I appreciated from him. It was a lot of very fluid movement and the way that he had us clearing. I just wanted to bring that comment in there.
No, and I think that's where, a lot of guys will talk about rolling through the doorway, and my first question with that is, like, as soon as somebody says that, no problem, I can set that up on the range, roll through this doorway, you see where the target is, you're going to know where it is, this is a shoot target, shoot it, roll through and shoot it without stopping. I have yet to see anybody that's able to do it. It goes back to, like, the hard skill piece, right? You can train shooting in absence of tactics. As a matter of fact, I think you should only train shooting in absence of tactics.
I really like hearing you say all this. It's adding validation to our thought process. Yep.
You cannot train tactics without a marksmanship component. Yep. You cannot. Like, for your point of delivery of work, right? The reason you're going into the house is to deliver energy with your tools, right? There's bad guys in there. This is one thing I would hear forever, like, oh, there's a guy in the back room with a barricaded shooter. Nope, that's just a dude in the house. It's literally the reason we're here. Let's go get him. But that's not the mentality, right? The mentality is, now we need to make a situation completely safe. That is just not a safe situation. Right? We make CQB safe and manageable and successful by selecting the right guys to do it. If we remove that selection process away from it, we can't even really talk about it. To go do whatever the fuck you want. Right? If you want to hang out, like, if I ask you guys, right, the doorway and 3 feet on either side is called what?
I'm not sure.
Again, it's not our wheelhouse, brother.
You ever heard the fatal funnel?
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay,
yeah.
got you, buddy. Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's
Got
not
that.
called that place because it's a place you stay for a long time.
Yeah.
You know, but at some point it changed to where it wasn't the fatal funnel. It was where I do all my work from place.
Okay.
And you're talking about the you said it earlier, it was limited entry clearing, right? Is that what you're referring to
Limited
Yeah.
pin.
Okay.
So if you're pieing doorways in American construction, residential construction, where I think a lot of cops clear that, right? Your house, what everyone likes to say they're doing CQB for, bullets will go through everything, right? So if you're using, you're throwing light in the room, you're making noise, and you're trying to clear a lot of it from the doorway, that's the same equivalent as like closing your eyes so someone can't see you mentality. It fucking doesn't work, right? If somebody wants to fight, if whatever is making you clear it, you have to assume somebody at least as good as you is in there, right? That's the fight you're preparing for, right? The kind of the fight yourself mentality. So I know how I am, and I'm going to want that fight to be really, really fast. Because what's going to happen if that guy is, as I'm pieing, he sees my barrel before me and he shoots the doorway? We see it on body cam footage, right? The emotional fire starts. Now it's unsighted emotion fire from the doorway because you think that's going to solve the problem. And more times than not, it doesn't solve the problem, right? And there's a retreating element to it, right? So now you've retreated and he's already told you what his intentions are. What if it's like, if we're training to fight, someone at least as good as us. Now, what if he sees me retreat and he closes on the door? Now, what do I have to deal with? So I took a situation that was already super dangerous, and I'm making a series of decisions where I'm losing initiative, making it more dangerous. Someone explain that to me, right? But what they do is like, an LE's guy say, well, we just, we'll strong point the door, we'll surround and call out. If that's what you do when a fight happens, then don't go in. Just surround and call out. You have time is on your side. It's like you're laying siege to it. Right? And that's where my question is to everybody. If you're the I'm not going to run to my death crew, then don't go in there at all. Right? Surround and call it out. Send a robot in, send a drone in, send gas in. The last thing you should be talking about is CQB. You're clearing a structure with technological tools. Right? Throw a bunch of gas in there. Catch a fucking house on fire. I don't care. But we're not talking about CQB.
So Matt, the one thing I want to kind of close this particular discussion so that we can move on to some competitive stuff is you are validating one important point that we like to make all the time, and that is competitive shooting in the tactical community in some cases is looked down. That's just competition gamesmanship shit, and that is not to the level that you have developed and that guys in your realm have, but that having that developed, overlearned subconscious skills with your tool being the most important aspect of it. And it's really, it's enlightening and encouraging to hear you drive home that piece. And it's very telling from your background that you choose USPSA even over IDPA, which is this argument. Oh, well, IDPA is more tactical, and just full disclosure, that's the competition realm that Aaron and I have shot for many, many years has been IDPA because it just happened to be the clubs that we had been close to. But you draw conclusion that the competitive shooting piece, the weapons handling, the marksmanship at speed you're saying is what people need to worry about more than they need to worry about, all the angles and tactics of how to deal with clearing a structure. I find that enlightening and encouraging, by the way.
Yeah. It's what we talked for almost 50 minutes about, CQB, and it's my opinions, right? Like, I only do CQB as closed courses for agencies by request. I don't advertise it. I don't do any of that. So it's just my thought on like kind of what you see, right? I used to say, publicly for years, right? Like, Instagram is fucking ruining shooting training one video at a time. I mean, Instagram has damn near destroyed the tactics world, right? By just screwing up people's thought processes who are blank slates, don't have a background in it, are learning from guys who, from my perspective, also don't have a background in it, right? It's like you have an elementary school education in CQB. Like, I get it. Like, you are the best dude. You're the smartest guy in the 6th grade. Like, that's how I look at it, So flip over to the competition side. One of the things I think is super interesting, that, because I've heard it for years, it was probably the first thing I really attacked when I came out into the training space, was the gamer shit, right? Gamer fags. And it's in my classes, pistol classes, rifle classes, we shoot stages. And you would be surprised at all these the tactical guys, right? It's like, yep, gamer shit, you know where all the targets are. I get it. You know where all the targets are. Now I'm going to give you 5 minutes to make a plan. You know where the targets are. And then you're going to start from here. And on the buzzer, I want you to go shoot all of these targets as quickly as you can. Right. And what happens is that's as tactical guys that kind of put their ego aside and they go do this for the first time, it's always the same response, right? They know what they're going to do. They got it programmed, right? You have a limited amount of time to do it. Now you've got to think on your feet and make decisions and remember what you were going to do. But shooter ready, stand by, that's Control Alt, and the beep is fucking delete, and everything goes white. And then you just watch them, and they're like, dude, I didn't even know where I was going. And I go, so does competitive shooting have like a processing element to it? It absolutely does. And until you go experience it, but like I would say, why do most people, like most tactical shooters, I hate to use that term, but that's kind of defensive minded shooters, or guys that are not competing, why don't they go shoot competitions? And I think it's they don't want to know how good they are.
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
You're going to train, like, let's be honest, like, you're going to probably train your entire life and you're never going to get in a shooting as a civilian. You're just never. You're going to be prepared and ready, but you're never going to test those skills.
Well, Matt, I really want to interject there for a split second. It is the same damn bullshit argument with certain martial arts, Krav, whatever flavor of martial arts that doesn't pressure test, and in some cases, I'm not saying they don't train hard. And maybe they spar hard sometimes too, but it's in this agreed upon sparring versus they want to talk shit about combat sports model that we plug into, kind of the circle that we're in, sports-based jiu-jitsu, wrestling, boxing, and that's just sports stuff. It's just, it sounds to me like you're kind of closing that argument, essentially saying the same thing that we say from the combat sports model, of that we believe that it's the best model for plugging in the weapons. Bottom line.
Yeah. I think the combat, if you want to know how good you are at fighting, go get in a fight. Yeah. Right now, if you're willing to risk everything to go start a fight out in public, that's one way to do it. Or you can enter a tournament of whatever, right? You can, there is now, right? There's combat jiu-jitsu. Sambo has always existed, right? A combat sambo match is very, very aggressive. You can get into low card shows that are MMA and actually go fight. I remember, in the 90s when we were learning like, Jeet Kune Do and training with Paul Vuniak all the time. Kelly, shit. Back then it was obviously way more so. We pressure tested that by we fought like every weekend.
Yep.
It's, you think some you win, some you lose, right? But you're going out and you're checking to see how sharp your claws actually are, right? That's not really a thing anymore, but there's places you can go to still do this, right? And I think within the combatives world, right, there's guys that I train with that, like, if I wanted to see exactly how, they're going to give me a really good look at what I don't know. You know what I mean? In a controlled setting. Like, you're going to get everything you asked for. And you build training partners around you like that. Like, hey, I want to see what Pan Am champion black belt feels like. Right? And you'll learn really quickly. Like, okay, shit, I've got some fucking grappling stuff I need to work on, right? You want to, see what from a catch wrestler or a very high level Division I wrestler, and see how powerless you are on like a very explosive double leg. He'll let you feel it. You know what I mean? But you have to put yourself out there like that.
Absolutely.
And
go ahead.
You have to have training partners too that are able to scale up and down. That's where, comes in like true subject matter experts, right? That know, hey, I'm not going to hurt you doing this.
Absolutely. So Aaron, I mean, this is a perfect segue because we are talking about the value of competition. So Aaron, I'm going to hand it off to you for some shooting competition questions.
So Matt, people that know you know that you are a USPSA Grand Master, and let's just make very clear that they do not just hand out that title. So you've been in competition for a long time and hit it really hard. Now, you've made it clear that you feel that it's good for at least even military people, but let's just take that even further deeper into this, because recently, kind of going back on my background in the last couple of years, I had visions start going out on me, and ended up having to have cataract surgery. So now all of a sudden I can see quite well, and now the shooting skills that I had at a decent level, 10 some odd years ago, finally came back when I could see again. So now my main focus is I'm trying to hit a match about every weekend now. And right now, it's just about trying not to get that blank slate, just my plan. Like you said, anyone that's serious about it, even if you're serious at a club match like me, you're going to go up there and you're going to look at the stage and you're going to plan that stage. You're going to visualize it. You're going to try to make sure okay, I know I'm going to reload at this target, etc. Right? This is the order of targets I'm going to go, etc. I'm trying. That's one of the things that is one of the hardest things to do, is make sure you can execute that plan, and then of course execute that shooting as some subconscious skill. And man, you're at this high level USPSA Grand Master, and I'm a decent local guy, but I don't know how many times I try to tell people that are just they want to get better at shooting. They're fairly serious about being a gun owner, wanting to be a better shooter, etc. But then they don't show up to the range, etc. But to me, the best way to hone and climb the learning curve of manipulating a firearm and getting that some subconscious skills is to go down to a local match. What are your thoughts on that? And I mean, again, I just don't think it's just a way. My opinion is a way to climb the shooting learning curve much faster to
Oh,
put yourself out there.
I agree. I think I think it's kind of like there's no other way to really test yourself, right? There's nothing that you can set up on your own range, when you're by yourself, even with your buddies. I don't care how many kettlebell swings you're doing before you shoot. You are not going to actually simulate the pressure that you feel when, you know,
Beep, beep.
it's your only run. Everybody's watching. You're there. Like, now you have to deliver, right? You have to, your point of performance is you have to deliver and demonstrate skill on demand with a pistol. Like you and outside of classifiers, typically in stages that they're not, similar, they're not standardized in any way, and that's where I think club matches, some of the club matches around North Carolina are very good because, like, there are guys, Go Shoot with Chris Tilley, he sets up a highly technical match. Like, it's like you're shooting a level 2 match at every club match. Like, it's a very good training
Awesome.
tool. And then on top of all that, you can enter a match and be like, this is what I'm focusing on, right? I know, like, I'm going to shoot a penalty free match for your first match. That should be everyone's goal, right? I'm going to shoot a safe match. I'm not going to get disqualified. And then I want to shoot no penalties. And then from a data aggregate standpoint, they are going to compile so much data about what just happened that day for you that you can use, Practice Score competitor app, Practice Score, the real app, and like see where you stack up. And then that should drive your training, right? You could be, okay, hey, I'm really accurate, right? What a lot of guys find out is like, I'm very accurate, but I'm slow. So you can take that into your training and start to break down, like, where does the speed of shooting come from? Right? Because it ain't fucking this, right? And that's the one thing you learn on the competitive side, right? The difference between a fast shooter and not a fast shooter is all of the shit you do when you're not shooting.
Mm.
So you start to attack those things, right? The vision piece, right? And it's kind of true in any target array. You're going to spend more time in between targets than you spend on the targets, you know? And you start to feed that information you're getting from the matches back into your training, right? And if you do nothing else, it will just, where your current state is on demand delivery, it's going to drive your training, right? And you can see yourself get better. You can see yourself regressing, right? And you'll actually learn, like, I think, what you can do when you're called on to do it. And then also, there's going to be good shooters there, right? You shoot North Carolina, man, there's national champs, area, national level match champs. There's GMs all over the place. Now you can kind of balance yourself against other guys. Like, hey, like, I shot the same amount of alphas as he did, but I shot some more penalties. And, like, you start to wonder, like, dude, how did he put 40 seconds on me? And I think it's invaluable. It's invaluable as a tool to drive training, right? Because it's just focusing on shooting, right? It's not a scenario, it's not anything else. But you're living in a fantasy world if you think you can't deliver at a fucking club match, but you can deliver on the street. Like, you're just lying to yourself. Like, I have, there's nothing else to say for, if you're taught, you think you're a good shooter, you're going to be able to rise to the occasion or whatever people say. Yeah, you go test it out and see. And what you'll find out is that, nope, you probably skills aren't developed at the level they need to be. And that's a hard thing for people to do, because there is so much ego and machismo around these things right here. I don't know why.
Yeah.
It's just,
Boy, we talk about that all the time.
put it away, man. Like, you go there, like I've never been to the range and when someone's shooting bad have given two fucking shits that they're shooting bad.
Yeah.
I don't
Are
think
you
that
talking are you talking about at a match that you don't care that someone is doing poorly? You're just glad they're
it
there? Is that what you're saying?
yeah, at a match, even if I'm training with people, like it's not like, oh dude, you're a piece of shit. You're so bad at shooting. No, it's if nothing else, it's like you're out there training, right? That is in my mind, that's the real community part of it.
Yes.
You're showing up, right? Which for a lot of people, they don't ever show up. You see it in the military side, right? I have more conversations with dudes that are like, oh, I'm thinking about going to this trial, this selection or whatever. Yeah, I think you should fucking stop talking to me about it and just go do it. The problem is you think you want to do it, but you don't want to know if you can do it. Right? If I never go, then it's like, oh man, I was going to do that. I would have been really good at that. Well, you should have went and did it then.
Well, and man, I love the way you put that because that's why I kind of lit up a little bit. Because, so, I mean, I'll just lay it out there. Any club match, what I like being is in the top 10. That's where I am these days. It's just a club match, but that makes me happy. So I'm not a superstar at it, but I'm an okay shooter. But then I try and ask people, "Hey man, you gotta come out." And I mean, frankly, my wife tried to get her out, my other buddies, and they're like, "Oh, I'm not that good." I'll say, no matter how many times I tell any of them that this is how it's going to go, you're going to show up, you're going to have beginning shooters, you're going to have mid-level shooters, you're going to probably have some at least high-level amateurs, semi-pros at all of those types at the same match. And that professional shooter is going to be so stoked that beginning shooter is there shooting. And no matter how many times I tell people that, it's like, how can you get that across to them?
And more times than not, the high level dudes are going to help,
Yep.
especially at a club match. Major match, they're like, now, they don't want to,
Got
they're
to
trying to
focus.
win their own match. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? But at club matches, it's like, no, the information share that happens is awesome. Like the dudes, I'll routinely shoot with, Randall Talls, Billy Barton, and it's like we're talking about best ways to run this stage. Like we're actively training each other on stage plans, and that's a good, it's a good thing. And if guys ask questions like, "Hey, what do you think about doing this or that?" Like GMs are going to tell you, "No, I wouldn't. That doesn't make sense because of this," or that's really aggressive. Go ahead and try it. See if you can do it. I think a lot of guys will put too much emphasis on their actual stage plan, or they'll have a plan that they can execute really, really well, but then they see somebody else do something different and they change their stage plan
Mm,
immediately. And it's like, from my experience, like I will plan stages based off what I know I can do with very high levels of certainty.
mm,
Now, the aggression, that's on me, right? And that's where the time is. But if I know, like, hey, like maybe at a club match, I know I'm going to shoot an activator and there's 3 papers I can take. And I'm like, I don't think I can get those papers before I hit the swinger, right? Maybe I take 1 or 2, like, but there's times that within those conditions, you're like, all right, I'm just going to try it. You're like, yep, I just proved to myself I can't do it. Like, you know, um, but I think a lot of guys focus on the wrong things, especially when it comes to like stage planning and things like that, where it's like no plan is, from stages that I've seen, no plan is really that much better than the other one. It all comes down to the execution, right? You see it at Area 4 this year. There are a lot of them like, am I going to go to the left and then to the right? And you watch a guy like Nils runs it, and where we thought we were cutting times out, I mean, he literally moved the longer distance than me and Randall did and was, a couple seconds faster. It's all about the execution. right? And then understanding where the time actually comes from. And to me, one of the biggest things I learned in the practical world that directly translates over to, the defensive or tactical world is being ready to shoot sooner. That is the goal, right? That it's in every aspect, moving into position, gun up, ready to shoot. Even from an aiming standpoint, right? If I can grab the right part of the target and I can get my dot stopped and stable there, or get the right level of confirmation that I need sooner than someone else, I'm going to win, right? That in competitive shooting literally taught me that. I've never heard, at any place I've ever worked, one person talk like that, right? I only hear competitive guys talk like that, right? It's extremely valuable. It's sad nowadays that there still is that crowd, right? And I think at this point, the real discussion is like, when I hear guys say that, oh, it's a gamer thing or whatever, like, dude, I'm going to attack you. I'm going to attack your credibility right now. Like, in terms of professional development, your ability to shoot, everything, especially if you're building a business on this. It would be saying, like, don't ever train with a timer. That'll get you killed. There's no timers in the streets. Okay. You should never do jiu-jitsu with a partner. Just do katas by yourself. You win those all the time. Like, dude, you're fucking stupid. Like, it's just a bad idea.
Excellent. Yeah, I have not hit USPSA, but literally in the last about 3 months, I had neck surgery a few months ago too. So I'm still kind of getting back into the swing of things. But so when I really got released to shoot again, I went and shot one match. I was like, man, I'm gonna spend my flipping ammo on matches every weekend that I can get to one. So I'm trying to hit one every weekend. So that means that the cool thing is, so I'm in Oklahoma. We've got a pretty hefty shooting culture here too. There's a match probably every weekend day, every weekend.
Yeah.
So I've got IDPA Saturday. I've got USPSA the next day. I've got Still Challenge the next weekend, and then I've got a practical. There's a new competition here. It's all practical rifle, not PCC, but I can go run my full
Yeah.
AR.
PCSL.
I think that's what they call it, but I have not hit that or USPSA yet. But I'm going to hit both of those real soon.
I think it doesn't matter the organization, right? In terms of, I mean, even GSSF, at least you're testing something, right? Obviously, I think like PCSL, Steel Challenge, IDPA or USPSA are going to give you a better idea of where you stand, because in terms of like guys that are going out for it compared to like a GSSF or Bianchi or something like that, those games are a little bit different. But like you hear it all the time, right? USPSA versus IDPA. Well, USPSA is a faster game, right? And it's a faster game because of how the penalties are structured in some of the rule sets. But IDPA has changed some rule sets in recent years to make it more USPSA, but the penalty structure is still the same as it always was. So that dictates the pace of the game, right? IDPA is going to value accuracy a little bit more for speed. But I'll tell you, if you're a very accurate, fast USPSA shooter and you go shoot IDPA, you dominate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like it's because you're still hitting, you shoot a bunch of alphas. It's whatever. The penalties are a little bit more. So I don't think guys need to get wrapped around like it's only USPSA or it's not. No, it's going to compete, and using that, one, I have not met anybody that left a USPSA match that was like, man, that shit was stupid. Now I have, convinced hundreds of people to go to USPSA matches where like they go all in on it. one match, and then it's like, nope, driving home, they're on Ben Steger Pro Shop buying gear or whatever, and they go training and dry firing, and I love it. And I tell everybody the same thing. I'm like, dude, welcome to the nightmare, right? This shooting journey that you're about to go on, where you're never going to be fast enough, you're never going to be accurate enough, and as soon as you hit a goal, there's 5 more immediately in front of you. And that's where I think the real positive part is for defensive or tactical guys from competing is it gets you training, and it gets you training in a different way, in a not comfortable way, right? Because the way that I'll structure a lot of the training that I do with courses, it's like I want to make guys so comfortable shooting in ways that they absolutely shouldn't be comfortable with. And I use those ways, right? Specifically predictive shooting, with pistols and rifles as a training tool. Because as soon as I change the aiming scheme and start giving you aiming strategies, and I push it to more of a reactive pace where you're tying a sight picture to every shot, people feel like they're doing shit in slow motion. And that's like concepts and ideas that I've gotten, from guys, world champion practical shooters, right? It's probably guys that know me. It's no lie. Like, I'm very close with Ben and his training methodology. We speak the same language. And he's done a lot of stuff. I can pick up the phone anytime and have crazy discussions about training ideas and concepts. And then also being in this little group of shooters who are all kind of working towards the same goal and sharing information freely, like the innovation that's coming out of this group of 5 or 6 guys in terms of what we're taking back to the range, and hey, what do you think of this? And then you instantly have, 50, 60, 70 years of shooting experience to now, I don't think that'll work, or guys will take that to their range and balance it off. And the stuff that we've been able to kind of prove or disprove has been remarkable. Like, I will tell you right now, my training, when I'm out training myself, most of the time what I'm doing is I'm trying to prove to myself that what I'm doing is not right.
Disproving a hypothesis, as in the scientific method. Yeah.
Because it's gonna change the courses I taught, and the first one I taught was in 2019, is completely different from the ones I teach now, right? And the classes I taught last year are different than the way that I teach now. And I think if everything goes on track, how I teach in 2024, it's going to be different. And I think that's a product of having the right group of guys around you and the right mentality, collective mentality, to really drive training for ourselves. But we're giving it away to everyone for free, right?
Yeah.
There's no, for me at least, there's no Patreon paywall or any of it, because ultimately the work comes back on you.
Yeah.
You've got to go do the information's out there. If you take a little bit of time, you can find it, but ultimately you've got to take that to yourself. Because what everyone doesn't see, is you don't see the hours lost in my garage, the hours on the range, the frustration, like cooking dinner with a gun belt on, dry firing all over my kitchen, right? Dry firing at 4:30 in the morning so I can get dry fire, concealment, competition, duty, a blade, and get all that done before my kids get up for school. Like, it's,
on.
And that's where I think, though, you've got to make it, you just make it part of what you're doing.
Well, Matt, out of curiosity, because I think that's a good segue into what your typical regiment looks like. Aaron and I are, we preach dry fire. We try to dry fire every day. Doesn't always come out, but in many cases it does. try to shoot at least once a week. I would say I shoot once a week. I know Aaron's been shooting a little bit more than me recently, but a lot of my goals right now are in jiu-jitsu. I'm trying to get my brown belt at some point in the near future, hopefully. But I guess my question for you, what does your typical week look like, both dry fire and live fire look like?
I mean, typical week, I'm going to hit a minimum of 7 dry fire sessions. It'll be more. The way that I'm dry firing now are shorter sessions, but they're more frequent, right? In terms of times, if I can get 30 collective minutes a day, that would be the minimum. Now, obviously,
but you do it in pieces sometimes, is what you're saying.
I'll always do it for me, from a mental standpoint. Like, I'm good to go very, very hard for about 10 minutes. Right. And then now there's not times where I'm like really grinding on something, or, having good kind of in that flow state, everything's working, where I'll dry fire for 25 minutes at a whack. But for me, I'm always trying to capture time, right? Like, if I'm, my wife goes to school, as soon as she leaves, the belt goes on, or I'll do it in the morning when no one's up, in my garage. So to me, that gives me the ability to get more sessions, right, at different times. Kind of that, like, if you look at it, you extend that out over time, kind of the Kobe Bryant mentality. Like, I'm going to be doing shit before anybody else is doing it. Right. And that's going to be, so by the time you start your day, I'm already 2 sessions into this. Because
Nice.
For me too, it's from teaching, I've got, concealment set up that I personally want to be very, very good at and proficient with. I've got a competition set up, and then I've got a duty set up. So going between all those, and they're all pretty much the same thing. I try to train principles rather than techniques. But there's slight differences when I haven't had the ALS holster on for a little bit, and I'm going to go teach a class where I'm going to shoot in it for a week, then I'll put that on and tighten everything up. So that might ramp up a little bit more. In terms of live fire, I've gotten, since getting out and the free ammo went away, I've gotten a lot more, aware of what I'm doing, and more efficient in how I'm training. I'll still go have, 800 to 1,000 round sessions. It's in the oven. And 800 to 1,000 round sessions, but I'm really, really good. I can get a lot done at 350 to 400 rounds, per system. I'll only focus on usually one system at a time. When I go to shoot rifle, I shoot rifle. When I go to shoot pistol, I'm shooting pistol. Now there's times if I'm going to go shoot complex drills or burner stages and set those up that are rifle pistol, then I'm doing both. But I kind of look at that more as a test on what I'm doing rather than a training session. And I'll try to get that minimum 2 times a week outside of teaching, like 2 for me. But I do a lot of times where I'm, shooting with other people, and that always ends up to, like, even if I'm trying to train myself, I end up doing a lot for them and doing more talking and coaching and things like that. Kind of informal, classes. But I'll try to get 2 for myself a week. And then obviously, when ammo's plentiful, I'll get more.
Nice.
Pretty much I've been shooting, I think pretty easily, probably 50 to 60,000 rifle, and at least that in pistol a year.
Wow.
So,
wow. Yeah, that sounds encouraging. And although it's you're making me think of some other ways that I can improve on my dry fire. Splitting it up a little more. Because I just full disclosure, my dry fire sessions recently, because I started shifting a lot of my focus into my jiu-jitsu, so my dry fire sessions ended up being like 3 times a week, right? And I'd still typically hit range session a week. But I started noticing some degradation in certain aspects of my shooting. And so that's why I went back to the commitment that I was going to make sure I dry fired every day again. So then my sessions end up being 5-10 minutes. But you're making me think a little different about how I just need to make sure that I'm getting at least 1 or 2 more sessions in a day, because I know there's blocks of time where I can throw on my dry fire pants, as we call it, and shit, my timer's sitting right next to me right now, and get some more sessions in. So that's helpful. Aaron, what you got? What do you go ahead, Matt? You were about to say
think
something.
A lot of guys too. You talk about like degradation. I think, we talk about like frequency, duration, consistency, and all that stuff. But there's not a lot of talk, like at least public talk, of how
Good
you're
point.
doing things. Like, what are you focusing on, right? For a lot of guys, it's like, oh, you got to subscribe to my service. And I'm like, no, man, you need, there's books out there, right? Dry Fire Reloaded, Ben wrote it, great book, with the explanation, the cues, but really how you, right. And in that book, it's like, I recommend everybody when they get, for pretty much probably $120, like you can have the codec of shooting, right, in a series of like 5 books. And what I recommend, everybody do is read that book like a book. But what a lot of people do is they open it up and they start finding things they want to do.
Yeah.
Right. And
Good
I tell
point.
everybody the same thing, like, hey, they're like, well, what should I be doing? It's like, hey, have you opened it up to the back page and seen the schedules?
Yeah.
They're like, oh, that's not in my book. Oh, then maybe it got cut out at Amazon. I don't know. It's in there. It's like, it lays it out like what you want to do, right? The same thing with practical shooting training. Like, you could just, practical shooting training is broken up as kind of levels, level 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? But I think a lot of people don't use those books correctly.
Yeah, so here's the sample training plans you're talking about, I think.
Yeah, because people, that's the number one question, right? What do I do? What do you want to get good at? Like, do you want to win club matches, or do you want to be Deathstalker national champion? Because those are 2 different goals.
Yeah, so he's got new shooter, accurate but slow, fast but inaccurate. I mean, and it goes on. So yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. So it's but then, the actual conduct of a session, right? So I think I learned really early on, that I wasn't dry firing as effectively as I could. And I was focused on the wrong things, right? Where most people, I think, go down this road, right? Gun handling is the easiest thing to attack, because you can get bona fide, like, quantifiable feedback on how it's going, right? In terms of how it feels, in terms of times, part times. But the gun handling, especially part-time racing gun handling, leads to a training method where guys are racing part-times in absence of what's happening. And where you see that is you're very fast with moving the gun around and shit like that, but you can do El Prez in 3 seconds, dry fire. But when you go to the range, you shoot it in 6 seconds. The time shouldn't be that far apart. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
the recoil is not doing that to you. So what that tells me is a lot of guys that have these huge disparaging times between their dry fire times and their live fire times have completely ignored objective assessment of their sights. And to me, that's what I'm constantly trying to do. I will tell you, there's no difference in par times from what I can do dry versus what I can do live, because I'm trying to make my dry fire so absolutely precise and perfect that it just takes more time. But I found early on, like, CERT laser pistols, huge training scars built into me that I had to unprogram. Then racing part times and really focusing on the speed at which things were happening rather than the precision at which things were happening, right? Because speed is an element, right? But if I'm just whipping the gun out and I'm shooting like designated target and I'm moving the gun from target to target really quickly, but I'm not actively engaged on where that dot stops on the target, what did I really get from that session? I just got gun movement. Where I think what you want to do is you want to be able to move the gun efficiently and aggressively, but you want to stop it precisely. Like that's the thing that's the most important if you're working transitions, right? So I've done things in my training. Like I will tell you when I'm shooting or when I'm dry firing designated target or I'm dry firing transitions, I will almost never pull the trigger because I'm isolating stopping the gun, right? And now, I'm playing the vision game where I'm trying to look to very small parts of scaled targets. And then I'm really holding, if that dot doesn't stop exactly where I want it to, like that rep was no good. Like, oh, it was in the alpha, but I need to stop it in the center of the alpha, right? And that's one way that I'm up, like one kind of objective assessment criteria I'm putting on it. Then there's other ones where it's like, yeah, now I'm playing with different levels of confirmation where I don't need to see it. I just need to see a flash of red close to my point of aim, right? And that's where you start building on that and playing with actually dry firing confirmation levels without shooting and then taking that to the range and being able to actively apply that to, short courses, field courses, or drills, right? Because I think a lot of guys will still they're not mentally present while they're shooting. They're waiting for the target to tell them what happened. And I think that outcome based training is it's a fucking recipe for disaster, right? You've got to be process focused. You got to be really in tune with what's happening when it's happening. And that's what gives you the ability to make mid course corrections, right? Like we've all done it. Practical shooters are amazing at it. If you're dry firing your draw and you miss the draw, do you keep that fucked up grip on the presentation or are you trying to fix it at speed?
Well, I mean, I personally, I'm trying to fix it
Right.
myself.
So now, but if you're shooting and the dot starts tracking inconsistently, do you have the ability to fix that at speed?
Well, I don't think to your level. I think that I'm starting to discover that being new to the dot. The dot is telling me a lot,
Oh yeah.
because I'm newer to you running the dot, and I have learned a lot. And frankly, I've been learning a lot listening to what you and Ben have been putting out on doubles. Now, granted, I've only started to use that as a tool, and I probably because I'm taking the information and trying to internalize it and put it into my training, but I no doubt could use a lot more help on understanding it better. But yeah, that you're right. That is something that's very new to me at my particular level of shooting. Is that I am starting to come in tune with what the dot is telling me.
Yeah.
I would put it at an elementary level, Matt.
And it is, there's a lot of information on doubles. There is, it's in adaptive rifle, and I believe it's also in practical shooting training. It is in practical shooting training. I believe it's in adaptive rifle. But the doubles progression, teaching it in class, has evolved so fast, to where the classes me and Ben teach together, I'm pretty sure we probably teach it nearly identical. I may do a little bit different things with some awareness drills with rifle. But it's one of the things that came out, like the way that we're trying to push, when you give training out, like what I believe from a class, and you guys you've been to plenty of training classes. I'm good for an instructor talking for about 5 minutes. Any more than that, I'm like, let's start. I'm in a shooting class. I don't want to fucking sit here and talk. I want to shoot. Get behind the line, teach from behind the line. So that's how, the doubles progression, you get different cues at different times. Because as you increase target distance and the perception of target difficulty increases, there's different things that guys will pay attention to. Right. And that's where you can't give a long dissertation about predictive shooting at the 5-yard line and then just shoot all the yard lines. The information has to be delivered, and then the conditions are changed while that progression is happening. But I'll tell you, like for my class, the doubles progression, like you will shoot 350 to 400 rounds of just that drill. And it's the most valuable thing. When 2016, when Ben made that drill up, we had him, training with us and asked him about it. He told us about it. And then afterwards, we were eating and drinking beers. And I asked him, like, how important is this drill? And he's like, he's national champion at that time. And he's like, I shot 60,000 rounds of just this drill last year. And for me, that was like enough said. Like, you're winning national matches as your business, right? That's your job. So we took it back and really started picking it apart. Like, this is what this guy's is doing. This is what he's learning from it. He gave us everything. Like, now we need to figure it out. Right. And then we started, can we apply it to rifle? Is there value in this for rifle? And I think with rifle, in the practical world, it is the engagement sequence. It's how you engage targets. You know what I mean? Like, you shoot a parrot at the target. If I can hold the gun steady and make it return in a predictable and consistent way, I can get alphas, out to some pretty freakish distances. Right. But for guys that are carrying guns for a living, I think you have to sort of conceptualize doubles as a training tool. Right. Because we're still going to want accountability, control, and performance. We want those at very, very high levels, but you cannot have equally high levels shooting predictively at like rifle engagement distances, right? 40, 50, 60 yards. For a lot of guys, you can't. So we use that, I believe, in using that as a training tool. And then when we're the operational application of it, right? I'm tying a sight picture with the right level of confirmation to every trigger press, which that should be the engagement. And then, but you see what you learn from predictive shooting, if I get that gun to behave in a consistent, predictable way and get the dot returning exactly to the same point over and over and over, think of what that will do to my reactive shooting. How fast will I recognize that sight picture is good? The two numbers in terms of splits get very, very close. Excellent. And that's where I think I've seen the most gains from that is guys training correctly for the first time in like fucking 50 years. Because you think of any firearms training that you've ever done, you print any sheet up off the internet, print it, take it out to the range and shoot it. It's outcome-based training, right? Now there is some way to get better at that drill by shooting it over and over and over. You'll become more familiar with it, and then that is a way to train. But I don't think it's the fastest way to learn how to do that, right? But none of those drills break down the things that feed into it, right? Like, this is what you need to pay attention to in the two foundational skills that, like, I stress more than anything is grip and vision, right? This is visually the games that are happening, when you shoot this drill with these little small circles and weird shapes everywhere. And what I found in my own training and I think it's, the dudes I associate with, you develop grip and vision to near perfect levels, you will never have a fucking conversation about how to press the trigger. Because in an engagement, we're all pressing it the same way. I don't care who you are. The way that you're classically taught to press a trigger, you're not going to press it that way. You're not pulling up slack. You're not resetting right to the ragged edge. right? You're going to press the trigger complete every time, right? At least that's been my experience. You know, rifle rifle engagements, I'm coming off of it every single time, right? So I need to develop foundational skills in a practical sense that allow me to shoot at those faster than real life speeds and hold that gun steady.
Nice. Yeah, that's excellent insight, and very helpful to us and our audience, Matt, for certain. I can't wait for some of your classes in person and or
Yeah.
anything we might do here locally. Um, but yeah, that the doubles is new to me, even though I've been exposed to it for a while, Matt. I just started plugging it into my training, and already I'm like known about it way longer, and I'm pissed at myself for not plugging it into my training. So certainly more to follow on that. Aaron, what you got, buddy?
Well, Matt, you've given us a lot of your time, buddy. So we want to let you go. But it's been a while since I've been able to ask this question because we've had a lot of repeat guests. But this is actually the most important question on our show. And that is, what are your 3 top bands and or musical artists?
Oh, I don't think you guys will like my answers.
Hey, we like any answer. Any answers, you can answer it however you want.
Dude,
We stumped Mike Seaclander with that one. So, but give us what you like, man. Or
dude, so what a lot of people don't know, like I almost exclusively listen to rap music, right? I grew up that way, so I don't know if those are bands. They're probably not bands,
well, artists, whatever you want to
you
say,
know?
whatever it is, the music. If you only listen to Vivaldi operatic singing, you just tell us that.
Now,
So
so
just,
so I'll tell you, like, I'm a '90s rap guy. Yeah, grew up with that music. It was all that I listened to. The band, I kind of don't have like any one. That's one thing about me. Like, I am not fanatical about anything. I don't have a sports team. I don't have a like, oh, it's this band or nothing, or this artist or whatever. But the one thing I've been listening to quite a bit for a long time is there's a guy that remixes like '90s rap. So it's like Tupac, Biggie, Eminem, Dr. Dre, but he remixes them into these chill mix.
cool.
Hmm.
So he puts them against like really laid back, kind of like tropical island type music, right? And I've got a whole playlist on YouTube about it. So I would
I'll have
say
to look
that's
that up.
kind of my favorite music. And then I like Eminem, kind of the faster stuff. I think the way that my mind works, um, a lot of trap music, like trap remixes of rap music that are very fast beat counts, like over 200 beats a minute. Like,
Oh wow.
to me, that's very relaxing. Um, Slow country music, man, my anxiety goes through the roof.
Well, man, let me interject that I'm not much of a rap fan myself, but dude, Eminem is a phenomenon.
Yeah.
He is extremely unique, and yeah, dude, he's a badass for sure. No, man, those are great answers. Actually,
It,
that's as good as it can get, man.
what's funny is like Aaron. I mean, you see the drums behind me. Aaron and I are both musicians. We play a lot of the bumper music for this show, mainly in the rock, metal, so on and so forth genre. But Aaron and I are very open minded to all kinds of things. But I will tell you, I did go through a phase when I was, and it was the mid to late '90s, um, where of course Snoop Dogg came out, going to parties, and that became popular. Dr. Dre, Ice Cube. I tell you, I like hearing some of the intelligence out of Ice Cube right now. By the way,
Hmm.
yeah. So I mean, the dude seems to have his head on straight. But yeah, I've got some good memories from a lot of that music for certain myself. Matt.
Oh yeah.
So
Excellent. Well, Matt, we've even for us, this is getting to be a long show, so we start feeling like we're going to take up too much of your time, man. Just going out here, man. Thanks so much. This has been a very enlightening show. We're honored that people like you will come on and share your time with us and our audience. So, man, again, just thank you, and I look forward to whenever you do offer some more open enrollment that Eric and I can get to some of your classes, because I'm sure going to learn a crap ton there. So,
Well, right on. Thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
yeah, thanks a lot, Matt. And yes, you've got me wanting to come out to some of your guys' USPSA matches too. So I'm sure you and I are going to hook up at some point here.
Oh yeah,
in
man.
the
They're
very, very near
around
future.
where we live. They're all over the place.
Awesome, man. Well, Matt, you have a good evening.
All right. Thanks, guys.